Welcome, everyone, to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Monday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. It is the start of the Major League Baseball season, so a lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation, and a lot of predictions, that means, as the International Series gets going. So, today we are going to be looking at the National League and the win total projections there. American League still to come because they don't get going for another few days. So, yeah, wanted to get this one in before the season officially kicked off, where I am right now, like not while I'm recording this, but while you're listening to this, I'm in Japan. We're not going to be able to make it to the game that's over there, but still, that is why we are kind of recording these in a few bunches here, and so if some of the information in this is just a little bit wonky, just telling you off the top, taping this on March 8th. So that is, that's kind of the lens that we're talking it through. But, I still, I can't imagine a whole lot is going to change in the next 9 days while I've been recording this. So, hopefully not a whole lot has shifted in terms of these, but still I think the analysis is going to be really good. So, today it's simple. We're running through every team in the National League and giving my thoughts on some of the win totals and then, who I think will get there in the playoffs for the National League. So let's dive right in with our win totals in the 2025 Major League Baseball season on the National League side. The National League takes center stage as the International Series kicks off very soon. And so today we're going to be looking at the win totals of the teams involved in the National League. Let's run through division by division, and we will start with the Philadelphia Phillies. I have them going over their total of 91 and a half. I love the top of the pitching rotation so much with Nola and Wheeler and what they can do. I think that they have a pretty strong rotation throughout, right? Like 1 through 5, it's very strong. You have the aces kind of at the top with those guys. And then you have the absolute mashing power of this offense with Harper and Turner. Sorry, not Turner, but with Harper and, Turner and Schwarber at the top of this lineup. And so I just feel like there is a lot of potential in the Philadelphia Phillies to really kind of break through. I think that it's such a talented team and a group that you really do have to take seriously. And then like besides that, like they add a Max Kepler in free agency, which just kind of fits exactly what they're looking to do. You add maybe a bit of a breakout from Alex Baum, who was involved in a lot of trade talks. But I still think there's some power with him as well. Like there's just so much pop in this lineup. Castellanos as well. So much pop in this lineup that I just think they're going to be too dangerous to keep down. So I actually have the Phillies winning this division. We're going to go today in order of how I see the divisions lining up. And so this one might be controversial, might be a bit much, but a bit of a surprise. Up next, we have the Atlanta Braves. I think that there is a very talented baseball team there. And I understand they lost Fried. Injuries have been a major issue, and they've set a lot of guys back. But you look at this lineup 1 through 9, and it's just solid, 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 solid. You look at this rotation, and it's solid. Bullpen, so like it's just a solid baseball team. And you know if they're going to be hanging around the trade deadline, Alex Anthopoulos is going to make 55 moves to try to make this team better. And so I just think that everyone's kind of forgot about the Atlanta Braves. And so I have them finishing second in this division with over 93 and a half wins, which means probably need to put a few U's in this one now, and that's where the New York Mets come in. Look, you have an amazing top of your order in Soto, Lindor, and Alonso, and a couple of other guys, some younger pieces that could contribute in real ways. I just don't love where this rotation is at right now. I have some concerns about the bullpen as well. I think that there is a little bit too much relying on best case scenario in this rotation when you are looking at some of the offenses that you're going to have to face in the National League. So I have the Mets going under 90 and a half. Not significantly under, but under enough that it couldn't be a problem for them here down the stretch, understanding that this is year one of the Juan Soto contract and the start of what they are trying to build out in New York. Up next in this division, Washington, I have them under 71 and a half. It's going to be difficult for the bottom two teams in this division against three just absolute powerhouses. And Washington, look, they did what they could in a Juan Soto trade, but they're a ways away from being close right now. Same thing with the Marlins. Like they are the worst team in a really good division. It's a tough spot to be in, and I would be surprised if Alcantara, sorry, is with this team in August. So I think that this is a real step back season for the Miami Marlins. Let's move now to the Central Division. Up first is the Chicago Cubs. I think this is a very weak division, and I think they got quite a bit better this offseason. I a little frustrated with them just moving on from Bellinger for nothing, and bringing in Kyle Tucker is a great move. I have a little bit of a concern about the pitching rotation, but I still think like this lineup is good, and I think that this is clearly the best team in this division. So I think they go over 85.5 wins this season. The Cincinnati Reds, their total is at 78.5. I have them going over as well. I think that this is a team that has a chance for a real breakout. You have a very talented player, kind of head manning everything. They made a move to improve the pitching staff this season, and I just think they've kind of rounded things out a little bit with some interesting young players. So I think Cincinnati has a chance to be kind of a step above the middle of the pack in the Central Division. Up next is the Milwaukee Brewers. I have them under 83.5. I just think they keep getting worse and worse and worse. And I just feel like the strength was the bullpen. They get rid of Williams. Bringing in Nestor Cortez doesn't fix that. They've lost too much over the years, I think, to be really sustainable in this National League Central, when I think you have the Cubs as a legitimately good team and the Reds as a legitimately dangerous team. Up next is St. Louis. I think this is going to be a fall-off year for them. I think Arenado, if he hasn't been traded by the time you hear this, will be traded at some point throughout the season. They lose Goldschmidt. You need the kids to step up in ways that they just haven't yet. And so I think they still have some intriguing major league pieces, but I think they're going to be out of it to the point at the deadline that reality will have to set in, and they'll have to move on from a few of these guys. So I think that this is a bit of a retool year for the St. Louis Cardinals. And up next, it's Pittsburgh. I have them under 77.5 wins as well. I just, like, Skeens is great. It's a pretty good pitching staff. It's an all right lineup, but it just, unless something develops in a really big way, I just don't see them being able to kind of bust through in any meaningful way this season. But they are one of the teams that have my eye on as I might be really wrong on these guys. We move now to the West, and we start at the top with the Los Angeles Dodgers. They are the only team in Major League Baseball that has a win total projection of over 100 wins. And again, this is based on Vegas ones. I'm sure if I looked at Fangraphs and stuff like that, we might get a couple more. But right now they are at 103 wins, and I'm taking the over. I just think if anyone falls off, there's so much talent on this team. The pitching staff is absurdly deep, with not just like, oh, wow, that guy's a really good number 4. It's like, no, number 1, number 1, number 1, number 1, number 2, number 1, number 1. They have high-end talent that anyone who puts together a team in a video game would be jealous of, and I don't see how this team has any kind of stretch where, okay, well, that guy's struggling, but this guy can step up. And all right, well, Ohtani had a bad month. Like, he only hit 300, but Michael Conforto was hot this month. Well, I mean, this month, Freddie Freeman was kind of hobbling a little bit, but Max Muncy just hit 10 home runs in June. So there's that. There's just so many other pieces that if one falls off, someone else can kind of pick up. I think Dave Roberts is a really, really good manager, and I don't see this team having much issue this season. Second place, I have the Arizona Diamondbacks, over 86.5 wins. I love the starting staff with Burns. I get that it wasn't great with Montgomery a season ago, and maybe he is a guy who goes to the bullpen out there, and Rodriguez didn't really step up in the way that they needed him to, but you have that top 3 at the start of your rotation, you win a lot of baseball games. And I think the top of this lineup is a little bit underrated with Carol Marte, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. They acquired Naylor in the offseason. I think that gives them a really, really strong 1 through 4. And then you know that Moreno can do quite a few things as well. And you have a couple other pieces that might hit, might not. But I think that top 4 is actually really underrated and can do some damage. And enough damage that a very good pitching staff can get you through to at least a wild card spot in the National League. San Diego Padres. I think this last playoff experience in just an absolute rock fight with the Los Angeles Dodgers Dodgers is enough that you have to think that this team, not that they needed more of a swagger, but I think there's a bit of a proof of concept with them now that they really believe they can go out and make some noise in this National League. And you have a GM that is perpetually aggressive. And so I think that they are going to be close enough that when it comes time for the trade deadline, this team is going to be able to really bolster things up. And I think there is going to be a little bit of what we saw in the National or in the American League Central last year, where all these teams just beat the tar out of the Colorado Rockies all year and kind of elevate some of those win totals a little bit. But I do also think that this is a high end version of that, and so there is going to be a little bit of cannibalizing some of the records in this division. The San Francisco Giants are in a tough spot. I have them under 80.5. They finally get their big free agent splash in Willy Adames, but I just don't think he is the game changer that they need for this lineup to be really threatening, and I think they have lost too much in the pitching staff to really compete with some of these staffs that you have to deal with the Dodgers and the Diamondbacks, and the lineup you have to deal with the San Diego Padres. So I still think San Francisco is probably a move or two away from being a real threat in this West Division, and so because of that and because of the high-level talent you have at the top of this, I just feel like they're going to have a tough time breaking through and being a 500 baseball team this season. And we close out in not dramatic at all fashion with the Colorado Rockies at 58.5 wins. They're going to get beat up so badly this season. They are the White Sox of the National League. It is a bad baseball team, a very poorly run baseball team. And so I think they get just the tar kicked out of them this season in that division. So those are the win total projections for this upcoming season in the National League. So what does this mean now for the playoffs? So I have the Dodgers and the Phillies getting the bye, which means my wild card matchups are the Braves against the Padres and the Cubs against the Diamondbacks. So this is pretty big disappointment, I would say, for the New York Metropolitans, the amazing Mets. But again, I think this is year one of what they are trying to do out there. The one thing that I factored in with a couple of other teams that I didn't give them the credit for is I do think that if they are close at the deadline, they are going to try to take some major swings. And like if they're close and the Blue Jays are falling off, they could just try to trade for Vladdy right then and there. But I think that they're going to need a couple things to hit if they can keep up with some of these other teams. And there is a lot of an assumption that Atlanta can get back to normal in some of these predictions as well. But those are my wild card matchups. Coming out of that, I have Arizona taking on the Dodgers in the National League Division Series and the Braves taking on the Phillies. So the Division Series really takes on its name with a couple inter-division matchups. And then I have in the National League Championship Series, the Dodgers taking on the Atlanta Braves and beating the Atlanta Braves to win the National League Championship and go on to the World Series for the second year in a row. So that is going to do it for our show here today. Again, thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. Baseball season is here. They may have torn down the stadium, but you can still get your Calgary Cannons merch. We still got a couple hats available, so get that now at seaofdead403.ca. If you need some fuel for some of these long baseball nights coming up, check out swiftenergy.gg. Some really good drinks that they have, and some good like gear as well. Like the shakers are solid. I still have one from a couple of logos ago with them. So the stuff is really good, and it tastes great, and it really does kind of help you out with a little bit of the energy push throughout the day. Coming up on the podcast this week, Wednesday, we're going to be looking at the undervalued teams in baseball this year. We talked about a couple of them today here in the National League. We're going to look at Blue Jays players who could fall off earlier in the week. Last week, we looked at Blue Jays players who could bounce back. You got to look at the opposite now. And we're going to look at players on the hot stove who could be on the move in this upcoming season. So if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like it, make sure you subscribe, and let me know what you thought of all of these. Like I've said before, can't imagine I'm batting 1,000 in your eyes in some of these predictions. So let me know in the comments. Try to get back to them as much as possible. We're all in different time zones with me out in Japan right now. But check that out. If you need it a little bit more on the go, check it out in podcast form wherever you get your podcasts. And if you are listening in the podcast genre, make sure you give it a like, or a follow, or a subscription, or a review, or however you need to do it, or however your podcast catcher does it. Let me know, or give me a bit of a review, or anything on there that you can do. This has been a bit scrambled. Apologies. So let's just end it. Thank you guys so much for hanging out today. We'll talk more baseball coming up on Wednesday. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.